Don in London, hello. It's November the 1st. My video is all about recovery from addiction to either substance or behaviour. My addictive substance, alcohol, my behaviour equally addictive around people, places and things. So completely overwhelmed with trying to sort out my addictions. Alcohol, couldn't stop. Addicted to situations which involve drinking with people, in places, doing things, wanting things, having things, all the right things, perfection sought. Because that's what I thought we were all striving for whatever it was that we thought we ought to have and do. So drink was a quick fix when things didn't work out, and drink was a quick fix when things were working out well. And it took the edge off working hard. So if I worked hard, I played hard. Tried hard to make life work, and probably overcompensated because I didn't feel good enough for some reason or other in my past. I didn't feel good enough, simple as that. So people were always out there knocking other people or bringing them down to their level or just bringing them down, and I was very susceptible and sensitive to the comments and judgments of other people. So the more I might have been judged, you can bet I judged myself harsher and therefore tried harder to try and make life work, or make life work for you as well. Chronic people pleaser, and I feel it was because of all the experiences in my early days of living. If you pleased people and were on side with them, then you could live comfortably and not be the focus of attention. So it's striving to be adequate, and then striving for perfection in my own mind, keeping a lot to myself, and in the end trying to keep my drinking behaviour to myself just meant I went down and down and down. And on the way to addiction, many things happened. I became overwhelmed by work and burnt out, chasing that elusive perfection at whatever I did. And I was very successful in many ways, but not successful enough until I realised whatever it was I was trying to be, it would never make me happy. So these days, looking for a little bit of happiness on a daily basis, setting my expectations to zero so I won't get into a resentful frame of mind or get angry at the world. And when I do get angry at the world, or I feel concerned about what other people are doing, it's a sure sign that I ought to mind my own business and follow my path and do what I can. And say, truthfully, this is what I know and this is what I do to keep sober. And if you have a better way of knowing how to be sober and help other people, all well and good. But my philosophy really comes from listening to the people who got me sober, and all of those people, apart from some professionals who got me dry to start with, just got me dry, they suggested I go to a fellowship, and that fellowship is AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. So I got to AA, didn't like it, ran away, went back again, and listened in the end to people who just said, stick around and see what people say, and see what happens, and try not to drink today. So one day at a time, don't drink if you can manage it, and then see how life can develop. After all, I got to a place where there was nothing left. Nothing left of me, nothing left to share, and nothing left to do. Completely burnt out. And then I listened. And I listened as much as I could to what other people were doing. And it was great, because people had all sorts of stories about life, their life stories. And they shared them in the fellowship meetings. But we didn't share them outside the fellowship meetings because that would be gossip, and it could be harmful and dangerous. Simply because sharing another person's truth with their name attached would not be helpful to them, because they have the right to share their truth with anonymity in there for everyone. So part of the understanding, anonymous means a place of privacy to share with people who are like-minded and are not there to judge. So anonymity is sacrosanct. It's like the confidential box that a Roman Catholic goes in to make confession. The confessional box. Sorry, I don't know enough about our Roman Catholic ways, so forgive my ignorance, please. But confession is good for the soul, they say. So if we have a place to go where we can confess what is going on, the real secret us, and then get it out there, so it's no longer a secret, people can help us. And that's how it worked for me. So no longer secretive about my drinking habits in those final days, 24/7 drinking, how abjectly horrible it was, physically, emotionally, and this thing called spiritually. And when I worked out that spiritual, as described by a senior cleric in one religious organisation, he said spiritual is the ability to cope with reality. Well, I couldn't cope with reality at all. And then I learned how, one day at a time. And it's going on and on and on by the day. So I do feel life, ups and downs. I do get angry, I do get resentful, but I'm also able to find joy and happiness and some serenity around all that, if I know what I'm about. So with a drink inside me, all bets are off. With no drink inside me and no self-harm intended, I have a better way of expressing myself and being a part of something. So sober had to come first. Sober first, and the rest of life can happen. And to live life out there in the world. The truth is out there, they say, whoever they are. But the truth is out there, and normally comes through other people who have experience of life. So, and then we make it unique and authentic to ourselves. We start living our own experience of life, and it's the experience of life that people continue to share, and what keeps them sober in meetings of the AA fellowship. So I'm going to share the AA preamble because it's important. Some of the daily reflections, starting with November the 1st. New month, new step, step 11, all about prayer and meditation. And don't get worried about it, because whether you're atheist, agnostic or believer, it's what you do for yourself which counts, not what someone else tells you to do. Because if anybody tells you what to do, you're more likely to reject it, out of hand, simply because it wasn't invented here, inside your noggin. So it takes a while to actually start to understand that we're not alone anymore. Secrets do keep us stuck in old behaviour. And maybe we do need to open up to the world so the world can help us. So once we're sober, we still have a raft of problems to deal with, and we can go seek out help in the big world. Some places will help us, some places will reject us. That's life. But we don't have to drink on it. So that's the good news. The bad news is, or the really good news is, you still have to live life. Anyway, the AA preamble. Forgive me for saying it like that. We do need to keep on living life. What is the point of getting sober if all we do is feel frightened that if we don't do things right, it's all going to go wrong? The simple answer is we keep doing things wrong until they come right. Or we stop doing the wrong things and start doing the right things. And that takes time. So the AA preamble, why share it? Well, you will see why. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. So we share in meetings or in our groups, and we share with each other the truth of what we know so far. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. That's it. The only requirement, qualification, you don't have to say you're an alcoholic, and nobody can judge you whether you are or not, but some will, is a desire to stop. That's it. No rules, no laws, no regulations, but there are some principles and suggestions to help things along. So nobody can impose their view, opinion or will on you. And if they are, tell them to bugger off. So, no dues. Yes, there are no dues or fees for AA membership. So if you haven't got any money, don't worry about it. But we are self-supporting through our own contributions. In other words, we don't take handouts from people outside the fellowship or donations. We keep on going with what we have, and we put in what we can into the pot, which covers rent, tea, coffee, biscuits, literature, and some admin costs across the whole of the fellowship. So we try and keep going with a prudent reserve, better known as just enough to get by. It's not about money making or issues of money. That would start to destroy the fundamentals of the fellowship. So, and AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. And that's the good news. Fellowship is there for people with a desire to stop, and our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. But you are guaranteed to meet people like me, full of views, opinions, connections, causes, affiliations, because we have them, because we're sober and we have an outside life. So what happens in meetings, often we share about what's going on in our lives. So you will hear lots of opinions about everything, people's opinions about religion or not having a religion, people's opinions about the world and people in it, and even other people in AA. So we are normal human beings with a preponderance to gossip, but we try not to, and we try not to undermine anyone else in their recovery. And if somebody says this is the only way to do it, as it the big book way or any other way, the big book says do it your way, what suits you. And in particular, when it comes to my shares in November, which are all about step 11 of the 12-step program, it's very important because it's all about prayer and meditation. And that's a tough ask if you have no religious understanding or no religious background, and you may not even believe in a higher power called God. The good news is, whatever your higher power is, it's simply conscience, good conscience, or whatever you choose it to be, as long as you're not it, is how it works. And the power of prayer meditation is not necessarily getting down on your knees and praying. Prayer and meditation is done anywhere, anyhow, which suits you. And there's no big book, Alcoholics Anonymous way of getting down on your knees and praying to whatever God it is you think there is, or think there isn't. It's the prayer meditation and the quality of it. And if the quality is improved for you by being on your knees, that's all well and good. But if you can't get down on your knees for whatever reason, and it's not about ego, then pray as you feel you can pray, or meditate, or both. That's the key. Opening up ourselves to what is possible through experience of others and whatever you call conscience or your higher power. Now, that's easy once you know what the whole thing's about. So, to get to step 11 in the 12-step program, you'll get to know about it fairly early on by going maybe to step meetings or reading the AA Big Book or the AA 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. Wherever you get your information, eventually the whole thing will start to make sense. But it was complete nonsense at the beginning for me, and I just needed to hear the stories and be there and eat the biscuits because I hadn't got much to live on. And people were very understanding of that, and one or two told me, stop putting a few pennies in the hat when you need them to keep as well as you can. So humility, another one, that one of those words, humility, is the ability to keep learning life and stop letting ego and grandiose ideas about what we used to be get in the way of recovery. And intellect can kill. Intellect will kill us just as quickly as alcohol or any other drug if we rely on our own resources always to try and fix ourselves. And the reason I say that, that's exactly what I was doing. I thought I knew better, and I didn't. I thought I could do it privately and quietly, but I couldn't. And I thought the rest of the world would judge me harshly, and it didn't. But some people will, because that's just human nature. That's the nature of life and people, and what happens in different places and different things. So we work out what works in the end. Truth where we can share it, and not lying to ourselves or to other people. So that's a bit of preamble and what AA can do. And the daily reflections and some other words follow now from me. Anyway, AA daily reflections for today. I cannot change the wind for November the 1st. It is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do so, for alcohol is a subtle foe. And that comes from the AA Big Book. So anybody out there who's in early days or even later days or old timers, we all know if we don't look at our spiritual condition, that is, the ability to cope with reality, we are headed for trouble, because alcohol is a subtle foe and drugs are a subtle foe. They keep on putting us back in charge of our emotional distress and self-harming because we think we can do it again just to get oblivion or a high. Well, we might get the oblivion and the high, but we'll probably overdose on it and may kill ourselves in the process, or just have to start all over again. Either way, it doesn't matter, as long as we're alive to start all over again, getting back to reality, which is the true spiritual experience, living reality, in my humble opinion. No, it's just in my opinion. Reality is where it's all going to happen. So, carrying on with what it says here, from the Daily Reflection book, this one, I should have pointed it out, an AA Daily Reflection book, but if you can find a Daily Reflection book which reflects your beliefs and outlooks, please use that. Whatever works for you is the key. Please don't do it on your own though. Otherwise, you're staying in charge of something you're not sure how to deal with. And the problem with addiction is it will keep on telling us we know better than anybody else, because we're clearly aware of what we're doing. Some call that denial, and some call that just what they think is right. And it's not for me to judge them, it's only for me to judge what works for me, so that, and also express my opinion that what works for you is what works for you, and I wouldn't want to interfere with it at all. Anyway, continuing the daily reflection, it says here, my first sponsor told me there are two things to say about prayer and meditation. First, I had to start, and second, I had to continue. When I came to AA, my spiritual life was bankrupt. In other words, I couldn't live reality. My reality was bankrupt. If I considered God at all, he was to be called upon only when my self-will was incapable of a task, or when overwhelming fears had eroded my ego. So I got to a place of not being able to cope with reality before I asked, please God help me. Oh my God, what am I going to do next? When we say, oh my God, in company, it's to the company around us, please give us a hand. Otherwise, why would we say it? Today I'm grateful for a new life, one in which my prayers are those of thanksgiving. My prayer time is more for listening than for talking. I know today that if I cannot change the wind, I cannot. If I cannot change the wind, I can adjust my sail, in other words, my attitudes and behaviour to life. I know the difference between superstition and spirituality. Superstition is having a rabbit's foot on your keyring. Superstition is not treading on the cracks on the pavement. All those things. But spirituality is the ability to cope with reality. So suspicions or superstitions are fantasies. They're not based on reality. And spirituality is the ability to cope with what's going on now, according to many people. So the best spiritual experience you can have is to know exactly what is going on around you and to interact with what is going on around you. The good and bad of it is as it is. You know, we start with what is and then see what we can do. I know there is a graceful way of being right and many ways to be wrong. So the actual being right is not knowing what is going to happen next and saying, okay guys, what will work next, rather than saying, I know what to do next, because that's your preferred way. And that's the place where resentment starts with other people, anger starts flowing. And it's like today, we've had 3 senior vicars resign, apparently, from St. Paul's Cathedral because they're not able to have consistent spiritual views of what should happen now with what is happening now, and that is removal of demonstrators from outside the cathedral. I mean, if I were the Archbishop of Canterbury having a word with the Bishop of London, I'd say, listen mate, invite them in so they don't have a load of tents outside. Let them put up a stall to explain exactly what it is they're about, and let them go on it. And if the politicians want a stall, let them have a stall as well. That's how I would handle it. Let them do what they need to do, rather than try and block and stop. Because the more you try and block people and stop them, the more resentful and angry they will get. We have a speaker's corner in London, and really, every corner ought to be a speaker's corner. Otherwise we lose sight of democracy. And the reason why I use that analogy, in fellowship, you can say what you like, to whomsoever you like. It won't stop you getting a punch on the nose if you're critical and unhelpful. But you are allowed to speak your mind, but not get to fisticuffs, even though that does and has happened many a time. Because we're still a bit insane and stay that way all our lives. We have a certain amount of madness in us, and it could be called that irritant which causes pearls of wisdom. Whoever came up with the 12 steps and how they flow together, now these are pearls of wisdom because they're timeless spiritual principles, timeless principles of how to live in the moment of now, and how to get help, how to have humility and keep on learning. Anyway, some of my thoughts this morning. I had a bad night's sleep for a variety of reasons. Some of my physical complaints are not so good. So to do with diabetes and chronic pain due to back injuries, which have nothing to do with neuropathy, which I also have, plus other things. But a lot of things were on my mind about people trying to do it on their own, trying to work out the angles around how they can say they are better at it than other people, that they have cured themselves of their maladies when plainly they haven't. And they're still trying to do it their way, and then encouraging people to follow their path. Well, in the fellowship, we have this thing in chapter 5 which says, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path, which ought to be predicated with, not many people can do the thorough following of the path until they've got enough of their wits back. So there is always a problem there when we're looking for perfection, because there ain't no perfection. And one of the fears with the fellowship is, if people see public figures who have declared themselves to be part of the fellowship, then failing, what are we going to do about it? And what will people think of the fellowship? Well, the more we keep secret what the fellowship is, that's why I share the AA Preamble, because it's very clear on that little card. The fellowship is a bunch of people trying to keep well on a daily basis, with 12 steps and 12 traditions as the foundation. And we're not perfect, and some of us take time to adjust and be able to be in fellowship. Ooh, that's my neighbour's dog, Wobble. God knows what's going on down there. Wobble's had a bit of a difficult week, woofing a lot. I hope it's not me. But coming back to this thing, the only reason St. Paul's got a problem with the people outside is because they're outside. They're not in and included in some way. So exclusion, imposing rules, laws and regulations on demonstrators in the world causes more friction, causes wars and God knows what else. If you include people and say it's okay to be whoever you are, please express your opinions and views on whatever it is, and nobody's going to get in the way of you doing that. You may get some support and you may not get some support. So that's what works in fellowship. We include people. Everybody has a right to say their bit in a group conscience for a group or a meeting and how it wants to conduct itself. But providing it's sharing experience, strength and hope, doesn't impose any rules, laws and regulations on each other. It's about a desire to stop drinking, and the primary purpose is to share the message. It will come across in whatever shape or form, but nobody stops anyone speaking, nor do they get locked up. I mean, if your personal conduct is horrible, people will judge you as horrible, but if your personal conduct is, I've come to find out how to be sober, and by the way, I've got a load of other views as well, well, we may listen to them, but we won't adopt them. It's as simple as that. But people have the right to express what's going on for them, and that's why it works. It's anarchic democracy, or rather true democracy, as Mr. Kissinger pointed out. But these things seem to have gone by the wayside. You know, people are at odds with each other, and they're angry about the way the world is working. even down to Mr. Papandreou, who's organising a referendum in Greece, which could undo the whole darn thing yet again financially for Europe. It is entitled to, and I think the Greek people are entitled to have their voice. And if they say, we don't want to be part of it because we are just so appallingly poor now, that's their choice. You can't make them. And you can't make an alcoholic stop drinking. So the only way we're going to learn is to be open to learning again. And I know that's quite a lot of things to include in this. So, but it is November the 1st. New month, new step, prayer meditation. So one of my thoughts this morning, asking for help was my real moment of clarity. I said to myself, it cannot get any worse, and asking for help won't do me any further harm, and I'm tired of hiding and trying to do it all on willpower, because my willpower is done. So, for me, if God works through people, or conscience tells me I need to ask for help, why not? Nothing I tried worked anymore, and that's where I got to. But even then, I was a difficult son of a gun to get things in perspective. I needed time just to stop drinking and try and let the madness settle down. The madness of trying to do everything myself and to hide from public view until I consider myself worthy of connection again. And the more I hid, the longer the process of sobering up and learning how to learn life again was. So it took me a long time, because I was told when I was young, you've got to stand on your own 2 feet. When it's hard, put on a stiff upper lip or put on a brave face, and don't show weakness, because then you'll feel shameful and guilty about not being good enough. And that was the greatest block I had to overcome. I couldn't stand on my own 2 feet. My stiff upper lip had gone all quivery, and I couldn't put on a brave face anymore. And I was near done, completely done. So asking for help with humility, and even when it felt awkward and horrible, I still kept on learning. And that's what I try and do now, always, keep on learning. I've been trying to help quite a lot of people through email or whatever, and it's clear to me, and it took me back to where I was, living on the edge of life, living on the edge where it's also, itchy, scary, high lows, extreme highs and extreme lows, on the edge of life. It's highly addictive when we've been doing it for a long time, with the high and low roller coaster chemical extremes, naturally manufactured or ingested. We are, after all, a chemistry set, with much more, of course, with our emotional and spiritual stuff going on, often set to self-destruct in the pursuit of happiness. So, when I started drinking, it was all about happiness, and when life got tough and hard and horrible and people died, it was a good way of taking the edge off all those horrible feelings I could suppress, like loss, love, sadness. I didn't understand those really. They were only superficially within and pushed away. But, drug-induced by alcohol this is. I think, I'm terrible because I haven't got really that much experience of drugs, so I can't comment really in terms of narcotics. But maybe alcohol was just a longer way of getting to the same place, because I know when I've gone to NA meetings, when I can't get to an AA meeting, the NA process is much faster and direct and buzz, buzz, buzz. It doesn't mean that sobriety takes a shorter time, but getting to a place of addiction is quicker. Although I know, my hand on my heart, the first drink did the damage, because it fixed a feeling. Once I realised that's what I could do, fix something inside me, push it away or elevate it, that's what I did. So, roller coaster of chemical extremes. Now, I'm more sensitive to this because, well, no, I'm not. I'm just more aware of it for myself. Having got type 1 diabetes, where the insulin, which is a hormone, is not produced anymore. The hormone insulin is not only needed to convert food into energy so I can live, it also impacts on the endocrine system and the whole chemistry set in my head, the chemicals which are naturally produced to feel what's going on in life. So naturally produced can be made extreme by extremes of fear or extremes of high physical exercise or whatever it is, but they are extremes. It's like people doing yoga in 100 degrees, you know, hot, high-power yoga. Well, you're hot and high-powered, and you're also feeling elated because you've improved your chemical imbalance to an extreme of fun. Now, there are natural ways of having fun and feeling those extremes of fun. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any people, for one thing. But it's, you know, it's perpetual overdoing it, which is the addiction of self-harm. So, the reason why that's important to me, intellect and knowing and thinking and understanding how to use chemicals or exercise or anything to prevail over natural levels of chemicals for natural reasons and natural instincts, will set us into an imbalance, and sometimes those things cannot come back to where they were. But if you're trying to work your way out of a problem when you're feeling extreme feelings, better to get some advice or suggestions from other people and calm down enough to see you're not going to solve it on your own, usually. Or if you do solve it on your own, it is unusual, and it might be the only solution which works for you as an individual. And here I talk about the understanding of share the truth, be included, be a part of, learn life one day at a time. Intellectually, we may have 10 years of expectations built up, but those expectations cannot be translated into reality unless you put the footwork in. So sober living is making simple progress, living life, being out there and being part of, and not resorting back to self-harm. Those are my thoughts this morning. Step 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. That is how step 11 reads. So whatever your view on God, or opinion on God, or your belief in God, as long as you're not God, you can make this work for yourself. It's not your understanding as somebody else understands it. It's how it works for you. Prayer and meditation works for you. For me, prayer is asking for help. And an open prayer, oh my God, please help me, can be very good in a big situation with lots of people around me. Or it can be a solitary, please, I need guidance, and I need to reflect and meditate. So it's working on my situation, understanding it. How am I feeling? Why? What can I do? What is the real issue here? And sharing it with a higher power, or sharing it with a sponsor, or sharing it with the world. So it's out there and not in you. But if your prayers are selfish, like, God, please let me win the lottery today, I think for the majority of people that's going to be a waste of time. Or, God, please let it be so that I will get that career and it will be all right. But if you don't do any footwork for it, it's just an expectation of God and a resentment against God and the world. So spiritual for me is very clearly based on living reality. And if God works through people, which I think is a good feel, well, I feel it actually, when I'm in a room full of people who are on side about life and where it's headed, it's a wonderful feeling. It's like going to a football match or a concert. People are in the moment of now. It could be a good moment or it could be a bad moment. Half the football crowd are delighted when there's a goal, the other half feel the pain of it. But it's in the moment. It's really in the moment of now, unless they're drunk, in which case they won't remember the moment of now, which is very unfortunate if you're a true supporter of something. That's life. So for me, prayer and meditation is important, but equally there's tradition 11, which is our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio and films. And this comes from the AA All About Alcoholism website. And the Al-Anon tradition, or addition, is: we need guard with special care the anonymity of all AA members. Al-Anon members, that is. Now, this is a press, radio, film issue, so it seems, and the reason behind it is this, as explained on the about.com website. When discussing their personal recovery with the media, members who are identified by their full names, such as the case of those who are already well known in the media, they should not also identify the specific name of their 12-step recovery group. And if members wish to discuss the benefits of membership in a specific 12-step group, such as Al-Anon or Alcoholics Anonymous, they should not identify themselves except by their first name only. So I have, well, going on, why? Many recovering members have the attitude: when I was drinking, everybody knew I was the town drunk. Why should I hide my identity now that I am recovering? A good question, and this is the answer. The answer is, for the good of the fellowship, the example is given of a famous athlete or television personality, a role model for youth, who gets into recovery and announces to the entire world that Alcoholics Anonymous has saved his life. What happens if that person relapses? The kids say, well, so much for AA. Now, in a world where we're full of prejudice, being prejudiced against our own fellowship is a bit of a tall order. And I'm not prejudiced against anybody who cannot keep sober. There's no point in being prejudiced. We always say, keep coming back. Now, if we have to say keep coming back to people, it means people do relapse. And the fallacy of maintaining a fiction that rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Well, that is true if they can thoroughly follow the path. But we're not perfect, we're human beings. And look at those who are high profile in the media, who are ordered to go to rehab, and who are ordered to get their attendance at AA meetings signed. It's an imposition on them to perform as if they were unable to do it for themselves. Now, the whole fellowship works on personal conduct improving through time. So if we said, come to AA and we'll fix you, that would be promoting a lie. But if we say, come to AA, attraction not promotion, what you see is what you get. And what you see often is people succeeding and maintaining their sobriety for years and years and years. But also seeing people have hard issues which can drive them back out into drinking or using. The issues of life can cause anyone back into addiction. Now, that's as much a fact of rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. So the more truthful we are in fellowship, we're one day at a time sober, and that's great. But to maintain what will the kids think of us if we don't stay sober is a secret which will keep those people sick. Pretending it's all okay is no good. AA is as good as it gets on the day you see it. Attraction, not promotion. So you will see people who are very well and very ill. And in between all of that are everyone else, in the middle of the road, middle of the bed, wearing our sobriety as a loose garment, not confined to secretive behaviour. But the thing is, anonymity is sacrosanct in my opinion, so people can find the truth of who they are. But to maintain, don't tell anybody the truth of your situation, well, it's got to be a personal choice, surely. And that's what works in reality. So if you were the town drunk and you're not now the town drunk, I'm sure people are very happy that you're not now the town drunk. But if you then said, AA saved my life, actually, the fellowship is as good as it gets, one day at a time. And then we all have to work at sobriety. And some days we are more sober than other days, emotionally, and able to cope with reality. That's how it works for me. So if I were to relapse, I would tell you. I would need to tell you so you could help me. Or I would need to tell my group or my meetings I go to a lot of meetings, therefore I'm part of a lot of groups. And we all know and we all share about sobriety. And some of us have been around a few years, and it's been tough and horrible and hard, but also joyful, wonderful and great. Everything happens in reality. As long as we're sober, we can cope with life, hopefully. And when we can't cope, if we fall down, and a lot of people around me here in London, of which there are now, God knows how many people in the fellowship, 700 meetings, actively working to keep people sober. But some people relapse. Fact of life. Don't beat them up for it. Don't say that AA's failed, because it hasn't. When a person relapses, they relapse. It's one person relapsing, not a fellowship relapsing. So I prefer the truth of what goes on, and it's a personal belief. But if other people feel happier for people not to know they're in fellowship, that's absolutely right for them. But as a principle, telling the truth, AA is as good as it's going to get today when you meet people in fellowship, some good, some bad. Some many years sober, some people having relapsed several times and still trying to find sobriety. And rarely have I seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed the path. But rarely are people in a condition to thoroughly follow that path of sobriety. So it takes a bit of time to work out this is as good as it gets today. Anyway, that's me for now. Full words on my blog. A link via YouTube somewhere halfway down the additional comments bit. It's really important though. Tradition 11, prayer meditation, seeking help from outside sources, and being realistic. Self-seeking prayers won't work, because if somebody says, please God, help me win the lottery, and that person wins it, there are umpteen million other people who may have had the same prayer and it didn't work. So, make it realistic. Prayer meditation is about living reality. Spiritual is coping with reality, not fantasy. And if we get our reality sorted, we can work on our plans for today and longer term plans, which are realistic. Put the steps and the action in today, and the rest will start to become obvious by sharing and interacting with other people. And if I narrow down my choices to my fantasy of what I think it ought to be, I'm a prisoner in my own mind, rather than being open up, listen to others, see what's going on. I learn more by listening than ever thinking on my own. I hope. Today, that's enough. And, November the 1st, step 11. It's worth reading in the 12 and 12. I've also done a video on step 11, just a reading from the 12th step and 12th tradition. So it's there, if you can't read or you can't focus, whatever, or just a gentle reminder. At the end of my videos, I share the Serenity Prayer to God or in good conscience, as you choose to believe for yourself. So whether you have a conscience, a good conscience, a connection to other people who help you with your conscience, a connection to God which works for you, all well and good. But it's not being God and it's not being right. It's about in good conscience, or whatever it is, for yourself. Works for me. It tells me what I can do, can't do. I can change me and my attitude. I can't change you and your attitudes, nor should I wish to, nor should I sit in judgment of the world. I wouldn't like to be sitting out St. Paul's thinking to myself, they're going to come and put a writ on me to move my tent, when indeed 3 vicars have said we can't cope with this. And the answer is, why can't you cope with it? Well, you should have invited them in, mate. That's all I can say. If you invited them in to be included, put up their stall, do it in an organised way so a message gets across rather than we're demonstrating. that's the way to do it, and invite the bankers to have their stall in as well. You know, don't shut the doors. Don't lock the doors. Don't say we can't cope. Of course we can. We're human beings, and if we work together, we do, in fellowship particularly. So the serenity prayer to God or in good conscience. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, for me, always, in the moment, and as good as it can be today.